Opportunity of going to Jon Acuff's Remarkable You. Uh, I guess you could call it a conference, an event. It was a day and a half, but actually a little more because we went VIP, and so we got some time in the evening before. Anyway, I just wanted to share with you the nuggets that I took away, and hopefully you will find them helpful as well. And if you're not familiar with Jon Acuff, I'm going to link one of his books in the description. That's one of my favorites. Think of nonfiction with humor. It's awesome. Anyway, what were the takeaways that I had from the Remarkable You? There were 6 sessions, so I think these are kind of arranged by sections. And one of them is that we all have an ASL, which is our acceptable success line. There was a book I read earlier or last year that was talking about this, like what's your money blueprint? And so in terms of money, you can only be so successful based on a blueprint that you have for money. So that really resonated with me. And also, as I work with clients, I understand that we have automations that have been put in place. And so think of this as your success automations. What is that thing that's running on autopilot for you? That this is what success looks like, and or this is as high as I can be successful. So the idea that we have one of those, and so recognizing that, and he said that remarkable people, that being remarkable can be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated like we think it does. Often we tend to complicate things. And then also that by creating community of other people who are wanting to be remarkable, this can help you be limitless, right? Help you create beyond what you can imagine. So he also talked about unlocking the borders of your life by selling your future self to your present self. And he used an example, I forget the guy's name, who developed those little ridges in the side of the road that keeps you from going over to the side, right? And stops you from going further. That these are kind of like the borders, and we limit ourselves there with these little borders. But that all of us have the same job, and that's sales. And most people are going, I hate sales. And yet you are the best salesperson around. This is one of the things he talks about, right? Because you are always selling yourself on something or not something, right? If you're not doing the things that you want, say you want to do, you're selling yourself to not do those things. And so we need to look ahead at where we want to be, and that person there needs to sell today's person on the activities and habits and things that they need to do in order to get there. So if he said that if the mission really matters, we'll move mountains to make it happen. He talks about planning, doing, and reviewing, actually dreaming, but we'll only do the planning and the doing and the reviewing if the dream is worth it. Challenge, I think, for a lot of us is that our dreams, they aren't our dreams. They are somebody else's dreams. Maybe they are a dream of ours that we had years ago, but it's not really our dream now. So really kind of knowing what it is you're really wanting to go for and wanting it enough to move those mountains, to do the things that you need to do. And sometimes there was one person that was talking about, well, how do you dream if you've never dreamt or you haven't felt allowed to dream? So I've been in this situation before, and I talk about that in an upcoming course that I'm doing called Clarity Compass. So if you're interested in that, put something in the comments. But what I've helped clients do when they couldn't dream is, what do you not want? So if there's something you don't want, what would the opposite of that be? So I would say that probably most people don't want to be homeless. So if you don't want to be homeless, what do you want? Like if you could have everything, if you had all the resources and everything was taken care of and your responsibilities were taken care of, Where would you want to live? What would that house look like? Where would that be? Right? So dreaming. So that this is all for the dreaming part, right? Having permission to dream and dreaming something that really motivates you to want to go and do the other steps of his steps that he shares. So the second step that he shares is planning. So he describes it as planning is visiting the future and taking notes for when you get back. So as I alluded to earlier, like what does this future self want? All right, take notes of what needs to be done. Now bring it back to your current you and I'll make the plans. And so he talked about too that if plans are failing, so you're making the plans, but it's not working, that you've made the climb too hard. He uses the illustration of a ladder. We're right here now, and we want to get here. Well, if we're trying to make a leap from here to here, probably can't do it. We need to put rungs on the ladder. Well, maybe you've put some rungs on the ladder, some things that you're going for, but it's still too hard to get to that next rung. Then you need another rung. Break it down smaller. And this, I talk about this a lot when I work with clients and just on brain science, that sometimes it's not an issue that we have with procrastination or something else, but we just have too big or too vague of a thing that we're asking our brain to help us work on. And that's why it's not getting accomplished. So if we can make it smaller and specific, now our brain can help us to accomplish that task. And one of the things that he shared, and I don't remember if this was attached to this or to the doing part, but this one really resonated with me. And this was probably one of my biggest nuggets and has been most helpful, as he did a talk interesting on stage of like the things his nighttime self says, but how it doesn't serve the morning self, right? So basically this his nighttime self and his morning self having a conversation. And so from that I took, let tonight me make life easier for tomorrow morning me. You could also rephrase that in other ways. Let today me make life easier for tomorrow me, or this Friday me, or next week me, or next month me. And John talks about this a lot. Like, how can I make life easier for me in the future? And that will help us to do some of the things that maybe we don't feel like doing right now. And we'd rather do something else because we do like life easier. At least a lot of us do. I do. So that's one thing. And then he also had a phrase of what would a blank do? And to keep it fun and simple. So depending on what it is you want to be, let's say you want to be a profitable artist. All right, what would a profitable artist do? And so by putting it that way, instead of thinking about it as me, because like I don't know, we can start looking at profitable artists and what have they done. Then we can come up with the steps of the things that we need to do. So yeah, I guess this was the doing portion. He also said that remarkable people always have a motivation portfolio for when motivation is low or when life gets tough. Because let's face it, life gets tough, right? And so a list that fires you up and motivates you when the motivation runs out. So it could be a playlist for somebody. I know for myself, taking a walk will sometimes do that, just getting outside and just taking a brisk walk. It could be going someplace, maybe the beach or the mountains or a hiking trail that helps you. You know, what are those things that get you revved up and motivated? Have a menu, a list, a portfolio. That's what he called it, a portfolio of these things, so that when you're feeling deflated and things aren't working, you can go to that list, do one of those things, and that will help motivate you. So basically, that remarkable people motivate themselves when the motivation is low. And this is again where he also talked about the selling. That sales is our job, our motivation. So we have to sell ourselves on the things that are boring or temporarily discomfortable, uncomfortable. And that as we can sell ourselves on those, that's how we can be that remarkable person and have that remarkable life. He also talks about this, and I really like this one a lot, about auditioning dreams or goals. Um, and also tracking them, which there's some interesting science on that. Just the act of tracking something, even if it's a zero, it tells your brain that this is an important thing that you're wanting to focus on, and it will help you to do it and accomplish it. But I like the idea of auditioning dreams. Um, I had a health goal that I was working on this year, and it just wasn't flowing. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to put that one on back burner for right now, and I'm going to pull up this other. It's actually habits, right? The healthy habits that I was pursuing. I'm going to focus on this healthy habit instead right now. Not that I'm giving up on that one, but I just wasn't being able to track it. So it maybe just wasn't important enough at the time or whatever. So I'm going to focus on a different health habit. So I'm still moving forward with my health and focusing on something else. But the other thing I like about dreaming is sometimes we think something's a goal, or I think a lot of times of like 20-year-olds, right? Man, what do I want to do with my life? Like, how many of you are doing now at your current age what you were doing at 20? Probably none of us. And I think this is where that joy in the journey can come in too, right? Is just enjoying each stage and phase for what it has and learn the things that you can learn at whatever you're experiencing in life right now. And so the idea of auditioning something, it's like, okay, yes, this is a go. Or you know what, after you've worked on it a month or two, or you've just decided, you know what, I think I'm going to set this one aside. And it's okay, and you have permission to do that. And then one of his other parts of his system is review. And he says, don't review our lives because we're afraid of what we'll find out. So sometimes people won't do a review because I don't want to see the ugly truth, right? Maybe this is why we avoid looking at numbers, right? Because we know what we're going to see and it's not too pretty. But we really need to do that review and take that data and just look at it as a perspective, from a perspective of data. This is data. What's the data telling me? And then be careful of the inside talk. What is it that you're saying to yourself? You have permission to be your biggest fan. And so being okay with being who you are and things like that. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes here and getting a little lost. So let me get back on it here. Um, I really liked this one. So you may have heard the phrase, people will say, oh, I have to XYZ. And then in personal development, they say, no, I get to do XYZ as a reframe. Well, he had an even better reframe that I liked. I choose to. So this is reminding us that we have the choice. We get to choose what we're doing. So I'm choosing to do X, Y, Z for whatever reason that you're choosing it. So having remarkable self-talk, he shared a little different examples of athletes and how they have these positive self-talk. So like these champion athletes, they have this positive self-talk ritual things that they go through. And he said that it's always positive, instructional, and calming. And so he used I think it was a soccer player. I don't remember who it was, but part of his self-talk was you can you can cross the barrier. Um, it's it says you can cross the barrier. For you, it's normal. So this was something that this athlete would say when he's getting ready to make this field goal. And so the you can part is the positive part. Cross the barrier, that was the instructional part. And then for you, it's normal was the calming part. And he did several other athletes and went through their things. So think of that too as a way to help you get through the thing, is create this positive self-talk that is positive, instructional, and calming. He also had Brian Buffini there, and he gave I'd heard of him but hadn't heard him, and he had a lot of good things to say as well. One of the things that was kind of interesting was he talking about how isolation is deadly. and using the idea of, we use solitary confinement for people as a form of punishment. And yet, in our society now, especially after 2020, right, there's a lot of isolation. And even though we have um, social media, are we actually engaging with people and bouncing ideas off of each other and getting feedback? That all of this is really important. He also talked about having your principles or your values written in stone and your plans written in pencil. And I really like this. That this also helps you be able to make decisions, makes decisions easy. And I really like this because when I do some clarity work with clients, we'll look at, what is the essence of what it is that we want, right? What's the real bigger goal? Because there may be a lot of different ways. Well, usually there's a lot of different ways to accomplish that goal. And so that's the whole idea about the plans being in pencil. How we get there could be different. And he used this example for him. Family was really important. And yet he travels a lot because he's a coach and he does a lot of speaking and things like that. And so for him, the decision to buy his own personal plane or jet or whatever to get from place to place was a no-brainer once he was able to do that because the value of family was important. So instead of being at the whim of airlines and availability there, having his own availability to get from point A to point B was an important yes decision so that he could fulfill his values of family. And then he had 5 shortcuts here, so I'm just going to rattle them off. One was initiate, have a plan, get some help, community, and routines, right? Having routines that help you get there. So those were kind of his shortcuts. He went into that more. And then there was one other one that I didn't originally have in my notes, but I wanted to share it because I was talking with somebody today. And it's write a different story. So how our brain works is it automates things that we repeat. So a lot of what's running our day and our actions and our decisions now are things that were put in place years ago, either by parents or teachers or bosses or spouses or ex-spouses. And those are the things that are running our day. And so he was sharing a story about somebody who had as a kid, all he wanted for his birthday was a Smurf. And things were tight for his family and whatnot. And so his older sister, who was maybe 10 years older, in her 20s or something, wanted to do something special for him and threw a birthday party. And everybody brought things, and then he was just upset. He was like 7 years old because he didn't get the Smurfs. And he just understood things from his perspective. He wanted Smurfs and he didn't get them. From the sister's perspective, you ungrateful, blah, 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 blah. I did all this work for you and you don't appreciate this and that. And so he had written stories about that, and he kept telling this story over and over again about when he didn't get the Smurfs. So John decided to rewrite this story for him one year, found some Smurfs online and gave it to him, and it totally changed his story. And so he was able to write a new story. So I think that's really important. I was speaking with a potential client today, and as we were talking, I'd given her assignment. She'd done the assignment, but as we were talking, she kept up bringing in vivid details, a lot of these stories from the past. Well, the fact that they're so alive and vivid for her, she's still living in those old past stories. So a lot of the work I do with people is I help them, one, recognize what those are, and then create reframes moving forward based on evidence and things that you actually believe and know to be true now. That's an important piece. That's why a lot of times why just taking a blanket advice that's given out on the internet won't work. And she was sharing some of that where she'd heard this thing and that thing and it didn't work for her because this word she couldn't wrestle with, it didn't have that same meaning for her, and worthiness and a bunch of other stuff. But I think as we work on these these old stories, these old beliefs, we can rewire those, creating new ones around those old ones that counter them based on evidence. And then that can help us move forward. So those were some of the takeaways that I had. I would love to hear which of these was most useful for you. And I just remembered I have a bonus one. Um, one of the things that was on my list of things to do on a daily basis was to prep for tomorrow, and I wasn't doing it. Well, based on that conversation that John shared with his nighttime self and his morning self, I've changed that on my list of to-dos to tonight me helps tomorrow me. All of a sudden it's changed and I'm able to do those things. And it's also very interesting because on the disc thing, if you're familiar with that, I tend to test out on the right side of the disc quadrant, which is uh, relationships, people oriented. So the old thing, prep for tomorrow, is task oriented, but tonight me helping tomorrow me is relationship oriented, right? It's people oriented. So that was a cool win from that. Anyway, what of these have been most valuable to you? Which of these are you going to use? Do you need help with any of these things? If you need help with any of these things, there is a link in the chat to my stand store, or some other link will be there for you to be able to book a call, and let's have a chat and see if that's something